Thank you, Christopher, for that great introduction. Before I begin, I wanted to thank you all for having us here for this momentous occasion for you all, 100 years of excellence, and I'm wishing you 100 more. I wanted to first introduce my colleague, Evan McKittrick, who serves as our Director of Strategic Partnerships and Initiatives and works directly with Bonnie here at ODK to help establish our partnership with you all. Evan, can you stand and be recognized? And Evan also served as a core member. He was a 2008 teacher in our San Francisco Bay Corps, so he's an alum of our program. And also, Mike Tipton, I want to recognize him. It's great to see you as well. Mike not only serves on your ODK National Board, but he is also our Executive Director for the state of Louisiana on behalf of Teach for America, and is also an alum of our program where he taught in 2005 in New York. So welcome, Mike. So I am going to multitask. I am in true fashion with a PowerPoint deck, so work with me as I work from behind the podium. So we're here today to celebrate you all, ODK, 100 years of service and 100 years of excellence. And I could read your mission, which I know you already know by heart, but to sum it up, ODK brings phenomenal students and leaders together and allow you all to create a community to not only challenge yourselves to be amazing, but to also hold the bar of excellence for everyone around you. And this is the first year of Teach for America's and ODK's formal partnership. And in this year, we've seen a lot of great success from this work. Over time, we've had hundreds of ODK members join our teaching program. But in this year of the formal partnership, we saw greatness. There are over 99 ODK students joining our 2014 core, who will be teaching in over 48 regions across the country. Can we pause and recognize them for that? Thank you. It is their excellence and their commitment to greatness that allowed them to enter our program and bring that same energy to the mission of Teach for America. As core members, they'll actually be charged with impacting and empowering students across low-income communities. They'll use their commitment to excellence, their leadership, their commitment to their communities and empowering others to be great to hopefully create a world where their students and students like them can one day sit in a room like this with you all. So a little bit about me. Christopher did a great job giving an introduction, but I always like to start with my story of why. What brings me here with you all today, what brought me to Teach for America in 2005, and what continues to bring me to this work every single day. So I call myself a native of Washington, D.C. Growing up, I was the daughter of a military man and a mother who loved him greatly. And so in that marriage, they traveled across the country. Every 2 years, I moved, up until the age of 10. And my father decided to move back to Washington, D.C., which was his hometown, and allow his family to be raised there. It was in D.C. at the age of 10 and throughout middle school and high school that I began to actually see and understand what inequity was. When you're a child of someone in the military, you're afforded great opportunities. You go to military schools, you get to see great learning, you get to be held to a very high standard always. And upon coming back to my father's hometown, I began to see this world where there are some who have and some who don't. There are opportunities that allow you to walk the path of excellence, and there are situations that prevent some people from seeing that. And it was in DC that I began to not only want to live out this love of learning and being a scholar and holding myself to high standards, but it was in DC that I also began to realize that I wanted to ensure that whatever I did, I was impacting others to be great. That's a heavy charge for a fifth grader, but I took it on. Not only did I have a chance to graduate from middle school as valedictorian and then move on to graduate high school as valedictorian, but I was also selected to serve as DC's youth mayor. That was a prestigious opportunity that not only granted me a great title and a nice title on my resume for college, but it also allowed me to have internships on Capitol Hill and be exposed to great people who continue to invest in me. I like to consider myself lucky. I like to consider myself an exception. And then it is that alone that drives me in this work today. Because while I was able to go to college and I attended Spelman in Atlanta, I look at my graduating class from a high school where we currently place Teach for America core members and realize that for so many of them, that wasn't their reality. And I wasn't any smarter. I didn't always work harder. I wasn't better, no different, but really it was about access. Access to a great education, access to individuals who could open up opportunities, and access to this place where you can dream and be encouraged that that dream can come true. It is that drove me to go to Spelman and to work extremely hard to become a first-generation college graduate. I knew that I was starting a legacy not just for myself, but for my family and for individuals in the DC communities where I grew up, to show them that through education, anything is possible. It is also at that point in Spelman where I was introduced to this program, Teach for America. This idea of teaching to impact change. As a 21-year-old, it didn't dawn on me how important this work was or how major it was. And in fact, when I first thought about the idea, admittedly, I considered, well, will this be recognized? Will this make me be distinguished as the top 30 under 30? Will I make a great income? Will I be able to contribute financially to my community? Those were the questions I began to ask myself. But in that questioning, I also began to think about, why was I there? Why was I actually in a position to make that choice of whether or not I wanted to do Teach for America or law school or get a corporate job? It was because, again, education and people who had invested in me. And so I felt a strength pushing me to want to invest in others and do great work. And so it was in this moment that I decided that whatever I was going to do, it was going to contribute to uplifting and empowering students through education. Again, I didn't want to be the exception. I wanted my journey and the journeys of individuals like you in this room to be the norm. I didn't want to have students think through, can I go to college? But I wanted them to be sure that I can, and what college will I go to? Can I live a life of fulfillment? Can I live a life of happiness? And will I have the skills and resources to do that? And so I decided to pack up and join Teach for America as a teacher. So before I talk a little bit about my experience as a core member, I want to first talk a little bit about the program in itself. So on the deck, you'll see a slide and a quote that says, "Who we are as a country starts in our classrooms." Our journeys are not just ours. Our stories are not just ours alone, but they are the story of our community and the broader community. And when you think about what we're able to do as a country and what we've accomplished to date, a lot of it is because of our knowledge, our drive, and our ability to work hard, dream big, and make that come to fruition. But in millions of classrooms across the country, there are students who don't get that opportunity. There are students who could be change agents, who could change the world, but by no fault of their own, merely because of a zip code, a socioeconomic status, or limited resources in their neighborhood's community schools, they are not allowed to really reach their potential. And for every student who doesn't reach their potential as a country, we don't reach our potential. So a little bit about this term, educational inequity, just to ensure that we're all on the same page here. This is what it looks like. For 9-year-olds growing up in a low-income community, at the age of 9, they're already 3 grade levels behind their peers. So they've been in school for 4 to 5 years, and in that time have had about a year or two academic growth. That is problematic. And as you think about the trajectory of these little 9-year-olds who will ultimately become high school students, the reality is that only half of them will graduate high school. Again, it's not about lack of potential, it's not about capacity, it's not about ability, but it's the circumstances that are impacting them, largely driven by poverty. And then for that 50% who actually will graduate, who will walk across a high school stage and be able to celebrate that accomplishment, for them, only roughly 10% will have a chance to go to college, will have a chance to be exposed to an honor society like a ODK. And so if you look around this room, what it boils down to is really one person at every table. Can you imagine sitting at a table with your peers and asking which one of us is going to be the exception? For so many of our students, that's the question they have to ask themselves every day. So again, like I said, it's less than 10%, roughly 8%, give or take, will have an opportunity to go to college. But when you think about this in comparison to more affluent communities, you see the difference that it goes from 8 to 80%. That is a stark difference. And again, it's on the back of our students. And so what we want to do is think through, what is everyone's commitment to actually change this reality? How do we empower our students to tell a narrative that really highlights their greatness as opposed to the deficits that our school system has offered them? And this is where, for me, Teach for America was that opportunity. As I mentioned, I joined the teaching program in 2005 upon graduating, and I was impressed and intrigued by their vision. It's very simple. One day, all children in this nation will have the opportunity to attain an excellent education. While it's a very simple vision, it's one that is hard work, no easy task, and I've been a part of this network for 10 years and still working hard to ensure that this vision can come true. So how do they do that? How do they work to make that happen? It starts first with a very strong mission. Without a vision and a mission, you're doomed for failure. And what Teach for America aims to do is really contribute to this movement of really growing to impact educational inequity. How do we ensure that injustice at the academic level is challenged and that we're empowering individuals who not only teach students, but who go into various sectors to change it from a systemic level? So it starts with first a 2-year commitment. We like to identify talented leaders, remarkable individuals who have proven that they can do great work and change things. And we will invite them to join our teaching program. And in their 2-year commitment, they are in charge of really driving academic outcomes for kids. What does great teaching look like? What does great advocacy through education look like? How am I empowering my students to be on a drastically different life path than what society and standards say they should? During their 2-year commitment, we work to train and support every single core member who comes through our program. We know that teaching is not easy. We know that the stakes are really high. And so we train our teachers first at a summer institute and then over the course of their 2 years. We need great people, but we need them to be effective because that directly impacts our kids. At the end of their 2-year teaching commitment, our core members are put in a position where they can either say, this is my calling, I love the work that I do, I empower students every single day, and so I want to stay as a lifelong educator. And many of our alums do. They actually stay in the classroom as teachers, they move on to become school leaders, they impact education at the highest district level. And for others who decide that the classroom commitment was inspiring and motivating, but that's not truly their greatest impact on communities, they decide to go into different sectors, whether that's law, medicine, policy, business, social services, et cetera. But they're doing it through the lens of how can I use my experience and my professional trajectory to continue to impact students in low-income communities. So it's a twofold program. When you join Teach for America, you're not just signing up to teach for 2 years, you're signing up to advocate for kids and communities for the rest of your lives. So this is just a brief snapshot of some of the work that our alums are currently doing. We have close to 8,000 still in classrooms teaching every single day as we speak beyond their second-year teaching commitment. We have over 550 individuals who are currently serving as principals for schools across the country. More than 100 lead at the highest level of school leadership. We have 70 individuals who are in elected office advocating for change at the highest level. And then we have more than 130 who are supporting our efforts from a policy, advocacy, or organizational leadership standpoint. And this is just a snapshot. So I'll talk about myself for a little while, and through myself, I'll talk about my students, because they truly drive me to stand before you today, but every single day that I get up. And as I talk about my own core experience, I do just want to call out that there is no one single Teach for America core experience. Everyone is an individual. They will have unique perspectives. They will have encounters that doesn't necessarily transfer across every classroom that we impact. But one thing I know that we share is this commitment to our kids, this desire to really create opportunities for students, and this belief that as a country and as a community, we can collectively work to make our society better for all people. So I'll take you back to 2005. I was a Camden teacher. I taught in Camden, New Jersey. I had an opportunity to teach at Pine Point Middle School, which was termed a school that was failing. On average, I taught 8th grade English, and my students came in reading on about a 5th grade level. These are 13, 14, and sometimes 15-year-old students who were still performing on a mid-elementary level. And for my students, when I looked at them, I saw greatness. I saw potential. I saw some of the most wonderful, deserving individuals I'd ever encountered. But when I looked at their academic performance today, I also understood the harsh realities that they were up against. As middle schoolers going to high school next year performing on a 5th grade level, which of my students were going to graduate? Which of my students was I going to be able to look at and pinpoint and say, you might go to college and you wouldn't? As someone committed to my classroom and to my kids and to this broader social justice work, I wasn't prepared to do that. I wasn't prepared to make that tough decision, and I didn't feel like my students had to be impacted by that decision as well. And so at 21 years old, I did what I knew how. I worked with my Teach for America region, and I also worked with my school community to figure out how do I provide access to my students. There were many early mornings, so being at school at 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning sometimes. There were a lot of late nights, leaving at 6 or 7 o'clock in the afternoon. But in that, there was greatness. Watching a student who could barely read begin to not only form sentences, but write paragraphs and be able to read novel books for the first time. Or seeing a student who was on grade level begin to challenge herself and read high school literature. Those were the moments that kept me going every single day. When Xavier would have an aha moment and get excited about what he was learning, or when Takia would think about what she's learning and how that impacts her own community. How do I bring this to my family and to my family's family and to the community's family to ensure that they're learning this information too? I'll assure you there is nothing harder that I've done to date than teach, but there is nothing more rewarding than being able to give the gift of knowledge and empowerment to students and ensure them that if you put your mind to it and if you work really hard together, you will see outcomes. And so over the course of my teaching experience, my kids begin to see academic growth. I can stand here and brag before you and say on average, every single student who came into my classroom left at least 3 grade levels ahead of where they started, which is no easy feat. But what I think about is the growth that you can't always capture in a test or in a data book or in a grade book. It's this idea that my kids for the first time realize that I'm from Camden, but that doesn't define me. That I can go to high school, that I can be successful, that at the age of 13, I can already be thinking about college, that I can be thinking about what I want to do long term to ensure that my little brother or my community will have access to opportunities. To see a 13 or 14-year-old begin to envision that and then think about what steps they have to take in order to get there, it's powerful work. So at the end of my 2-year teaching commitment, I knew for a fact that I was in this work for the long haul. And as one teacher who impacted over 100 kids, I knew that that was great, but I also realized that there was more to be done. And so I decided to join Teach for America. One, because I was a student who, prior to my senior year, didn't know the impact that I could have as a teacher, didn't really know much about Teach for America, and yet this experience changed my life. It gave me purpose and passion, and it also allowed me to have a job where I woke up every single day knowing that the work was important, and that if I didn't show up, so many others around me were impacted. But it also charged me to want to contribute to something else that I noticed in my classroom. Every single student that I taught identified as a person of color and also someone from a low-income community. But when I looked around my school community and when other core members began to look around their communities, our teaching field didn't necessarily match that. Not many of our students identified as coming from a low-income community, so they didn't always understand the challenges that present itself in those circumstances. When we think about, the diversity of the teacher, when my students looked at me, they were able not only to see a teacher saying you could do this, but a person who had walked a very similar journey as them and served as proof. And so I decided to join Teach for America's team just because I felt like, one, this is a great program to become a part of and to offer others an opportunity to have an impact. But two, I wanted to contribute to the diversity of their teaching field. I knew that in my region, in the Camden region, I was one of 5 African-American teachers. And I knew that there were so many African-American individuals across this country who were talented, who just didn't realize the impact they could have. And so I was driven to join Teach for America's recruitment team, but also driven by Teach for America's commitment to diversity. So on the screen, there's our diversity statement. I won't read it out. I'll allow you to read it for yourself. But one thing I will call out is, it was powerful to see an organization step up and say, as a teaching force and as an organization, we are not as diverse as we need to be. When we realized that over 90% of our students identify as African American or Latino, and our teaching field doesn't reflect that, we have work to do. And while we acknowledge that we have work to do, we are committed to actually do that work. And so whether it was building partnerships with communities or establishing the team that Evan works on, where he gets to go out with great organizations like yours and think about how do we partner together, how do we bring this awareness to other individuals, how do we focus on diversity, or even allowing me to create a team at Teach for America that focused exclusively on HBCU recruitment, which is historically Black colleges and universities across the country. This organization was willing to put their money where their mouth was. And over time, it was a journey, but through concentrated effort, I stand before you today proud by the fact that our incoming teaching corps 39% of them identify as people of color, which outpaces the national teaching average of 20%. But even while there's a lot of joy in that, we understand that there is more work to be done. Because with diversity, and diversity is not just about race, it's about perspective and experiences and socioeconomic status and religion, gender, and so many other factors. But with that comes a perspective, and an opportunity to bring your credibility and your experiences to the table to really think about holistically, how do we make our country better for everyone? I was also drawn to Teach for America because of their core values. When I looked at what this organization focused on and wanted to see become a reality, it was this charge of leadership. How do you challenge yourself and others around you to be great in this work, to impact others? How do you really bring about the change that we need to see in order to ensure that inequities across the board are eradicated? How do we work together as a team towards this common goal with a sense of respect and humility, and yet a sense of confidence of what we're aiming to do? And so not only was I driven by their diversity statement, but I am driven by their core values, which drives me in this work today. And so for those of you who are thinking about individuals like yourself or in your campus community who want to have an impact, who want to push through service, I encourage you to either learn a little bit about our program or similar programs, because I think the need for great individuals in classrooms will always be a reality as long as 1 in 10 of our kids have an opportunity to sit where you are. I believe that we'll continue to need individuals to use their leadership and their thoughtfulness and their skills to empower our students, as long as only 1 out of every 2 students will graduate from high school. And I encourage you all to think about what is possible through community and excellence for our students, so that one day we can wake up and our 9-year-olds don't have to realize that they're already on a playing field 3 levels behind. With this partnership, before wrapping up, I do want to call out that with ODK and Teach for America, this is the first year where we actually had an opportunity to launch a video contest where individuals who were a part of ODK and Teach for America could submit a 1 to 2 minute video about why they're choosing to do Teach for America. There were several winners selected, but I actually wanted to recognize one and show you Jody's video. So Jody McGraw is actually a graduating senior. She couldn't be here with us tonight because she's actually at our training institute working to prepare herself for teaching in the fall. But a little bit about her. She graduated from the University of Cincinnati, and she's actually going to be teaching in our 2014 Southwest Ohio Region Corps. As a winner of this contest, not only will she receive $500 from the ODK Foundation, but her circle will also receive $400 so that they can put on an event in their campus geared towards educational inequity. And so when I think about Jody and the other 99 ODK students, members who are joining our teaching program, I get excited because they're going to carry the torch forward, not only for themselves and as representatives of your wonderful organization, but for the students that they're going to impact and really be a change agent for. So bear with me as we show Jody's winning video.